Well, it was disappointment for the two title challengers at the UFC 247 card on Saturday in Houston. In the main event, Dominic Reyes comes about as close as you can get to winning a UFC title, but falls short against Jon Jones by unanimous decision. He put on an absolutely sensational effort. Many people do believe Reyes deserved the win in this fight. He put on a really good showcase for himself, stepped up his game in a way that a lot of people didn't expect, and gave Jones everything he could handle and more, but he did not get his hand raised at the end. You could see how devastated he was by the result, how badly he wanted to get this title, this win over Jones, and I don't think this is the last time we see these two share the octagon. There was so much talk about an immediate rematch after the fact. Reyes said he'd love to do it. UFC President Dana White didn't seem overly opposed to it. Jon Jones said if that's what the UFC wants, he'd be willing to make it work, but I don't think that is what we see happen. I think there's some other fights out there for Jon Jones that the UFC and himself will likely pursue, leaving Reyes to probably have to win another fight in order to get himself back in position to fight for UFC gold once again. But in the light heavyweight division, no shortage of options for Reyes. He is a guy who is still somewhat new to the UFC, only 7 fights. There's names out there that make a lot of sense for him, and one I would really like to see is Thiago Santos. Santos himself coming off a very close fight with Jon Jones this past summer. Some people thought he won that as well, and we know he wants his rematch with Jon Jones. He wants a second opportunity to dethrone the champ, similar to Reyes. So I think the best interest is match those two up and let the winner go after that rematch with Jon Jones. Yes, it somewhat cancels out a storyline with either guy. You could do both those rematches against Jones and they are promotable fights, but I don't know how long Jones's future is in the light heavyweight division fighting guys like this. So I think in terms of making one big fight happen, you match those two up whenever Santos is ready to go. Of course, had to get double knee surgery coming out of that fight with Jon Jones, and he's been out since July, but he is looking for a summer return, and that could align with Reyes' return schedule after this fight. In the co-main event, Katlyn Chookagian doesn't have nearly the success as Reyes against Valentina Shevchenko. She really struggled to get anything going against one of the most dominant champions in the sport, gets finished by third round TKO, and that one had to really hurt her, got busted up early, ultimately gets finished, and you wonder where she does go from here. She has put in some great work coming into this fight, absolutely deserved this title shot, a name that's really near the very top, probably the second best fighter in this weight class, but you kind of saw how big the gap can be between number 1 and number 2 there. So there's some compelling fights there. I'd like to see her matched up against Andrea Lee, who we saw lose a controversial fight in her own right against Lauren Murphy on the same event just a few hours before Chookagian lost her bout, and I think those two could be matched up. I personally thought Lee won her fight. She has been doing some good work herself in this weight class, putting some nice performances together, and I think she is a name that's kind of trending upwards, and if Chookagian wants to redeem herself, start working her way back, I think Lee is a good style matchup, a good name that she could compete with and really start building that resume. So of course, no new champions at UFC 247. Reyes puts on a worthy effort, Chookagian not so much, but I think these two do have futures in their weight class, and coming out of this fight, there's some big matchups for them that they will be competing in next after UFC 247.